Have you ever thought you were being totally fair, only to later realize that maybe you weren't? Welcome back to Psyche Unveiled. Like maybe you judged someone quickly, assumed something about them, or gave one person an opportunity but not another, and you didn't even notice you were doing it? That right there is implicit bias. It's not always intentional. In fact, most of the time, it's invisible to us, but it still shapes our choices, our relationships, and even our mental health. Today, we're going to break down what implicit bias really is, why your brain loves shortcuts that sometimes lead to bias, and most importantly, how you can reduce it in your daily life. So let's dive in. What is implicit bias? Implicit bias is when your brain makes quick judgments about people or situations without you even realizing it. Think of it like mental autopilot. Your brain is bombarded with information every second. To keep up, it creates shortcuts, snap judgments based on patterns it has learned over time. These shortcuts can be useful, but they can also cause us to make assumptions about people that aren't true. For example, you might automatically think someone in a lab coat is smart and trustworthy, or assume a young person is too inexperienced to handle a job. Or you might feel safer sitting next to someone who looks like you. None of these reactions happen because you're actively trying to be unfair. They happen unconsciously based on what you've absorbed from culture, media, and past experiences. That's why it's called implicit bias. It's hidden, but it still influences your behavior. So, where exactly does implicit bias sneak in? The short answer? Almost everywhere. Let's look at some everyday examples. 1. At work. Workplaces are one of the most common places implicit bias shows up. Imagine two resumes that are exactly the same. The only difference is the name at the top. One sounds more traditional or Western, while the other sounds more ethnic. Studies show the first one is often more likely to get a callback. That's bias at work. Or picture a manager assigning a project. Without realizing it, they may pick someone who reminds them of themselves when they were younger. That's affinity bias. It feels natural, but it means others might be overlooked. Even in meetings, who gets interrupted more often or who gets credit for ideas can be influenced by bias. The result? Some employees thrive while others quietly fade into the background, not because of their ability, but because of unconscious assumptions. 2. In schools. Implicit bias doesn't stop when we leave work. It starts way earlier in classrooms. Teachers might unconsciously expect boys to be better at science or math and girls to excel in reading or art. That expectation alone can shape how students see themselves. Some students may be labeled as troublemakers quickly, not because of their behavior, but because of stereotypes about kids from certain backgrounds. Even how much attention a teacher gives a student or the patience they show can be influenced by unconscious bias. Over time, these small differences add up, influencing confidence, opportunities, and even future career paths. 3. In healthcare. This one is a little scarier because bias in healthcare can affect life and death decisions. Research shows that women sometimes have their pain taken less seriously than men. A woman reporting chest pain may be told it's anxiety, while a man with the same symptoms might immediately get heart tests. Patients of color may receive less medication for pain than white patients, even when their medical conditions are the same. Doctors, nurses, and staff often don't mean harm, but bias can still affect how symptoms are interpreted or how quickly treatment is offered. This is why awareness is so important, because bias isn't just about fairness. Sometimes it's about health and safety. 4. Shopping and customer service. Have you ever noticed how some people are followed around in stores while others are left alone? That's implicit bias. A teenager might get watched more closely while an older adult gets friendly service. A well-dressed customer might get extra attention while someone in casual clothes is ignored. Even online, algorithms sometimes show different ads to different groups, shaping who gets access to opportunities. The point is, bias can even affect what you buy, how you're treated, and what you're offered. 5. Friendships and dating. This one is a little more personal. Bias shapes who we feel drawn to, who we trust, and who we think gets us. We often feel most comfortable with people who look like us or share our background. That's natural, but it can also limit who we connect with. In dating, studies show that people swipe left or right faster on certain groups because of stereotypes, even before getting to know the person. In friendships, we might unconsciously give more chances to some people while being less patient with others. Bias doesn't always mean you dislike someone. Sometimes it just means you didn't give them the same chance you would have given another person. 6. Everyday snap judgments. And then there are the tiny everyday moments. Crossing the street and choosing which side feels safer. Assuming someone older can't use technology. Thinking someone who speaks with an accent might not understand as well. Automatically trusting someone in a suit more than someone in work clothes. These quick judgments might seem harmless, but they add up to patterns. And those patterns shape how society works. Here's the key point. Implicit bias doesn't always show up in grand, dramatic moments. It's often in the small, everyday interactions that seem too minor to notice. But when you add them up over time, they create big differences in opportunities, in trust, and in how people feel valued. That's why it's so important to notice bias in action, because once you notice it, you can choose to act differently. Okay, let's geek out on the brain for a second. Why does bias even exist? The short answer: our brains are lazy. Not lazy in a bad way, lazy in an efficient way. Your brain processes about 11 million bits of information per second, but you can only consciously handle around 40. To keep up, your mind creates shortcuts called heuristics. These shortcuts help you survive. Imagine crossing the street and instantly recognizing a speeding car. You don't pause to analyze. Your brain yells, "Danger, move." That's a useful bias, but those same shortcuts can backfire. If your brain has absorbed repeated stereotypes, like who looks professional or who seems dangerous, those patterns turn into unconscious bias. In other words, bias is the brain's attempt to save energy, but it doesn't always get it right. Let's break down a few common types of unconscious bias so you can spot them in action. 1. Affinity bias, favoring people who are similar to us. Example: hiring someone because they went to the same school as you. 2. Confirmation bias, paying more attention to information that supports what you already believe. Example: thinking someone is lazy and then only noticing when they're slow, not when they work hard. 3. Gender bias, treating men and women differently without realizing it. Example: assuming men are better leaders or women are more nurturing. 4. Age bias, making assumptions about people based on how old or young they are. Example: thinking an older coworker won't understand technology. 5. Beauty bias, believing attractive people are smarter, kinder, or more successful. So why does this matter? Why should we care about bias if it's natural? That is because bias has real consequences. For individuals, it can lower confidence, increase stress, and even affect mental health. Imagine constantly being underestimated or overlooked because of assumptions. That takes a toll. For relationships, bias creates misunderstandings, distance, and mistrust. You may push people away without even realizing it. For society, bias affects hiring, healthcare, education, and justice systems. It shapes opportunities, and sometimes who gets them, and who doesn't. So even if bias is unintentional, it can still cause harm. That's why learning how to reduce implicit bias matters so much. Here's the truth. You probably can't eliminate bias completely. Your brain is always going to look for shortcuts. But the good news is, you can train your brain to pause, question, and choose differently. It's about reducing bias, not pretending it doesn't exist. Think of it like exercising a muscle. The more you practice awareness, the stronger your ability to override bias becomes. Now let's get practical. Here are some simple strategies you can use to reduce bias in everyday life. 1. Pause and question your first reaction. Next time you meet someone new, notice your snap judgment. Ask yourself, is this based on fact or on assumption? 2. Expose yourself to different perspectives. Read books, listen to podcasts, or follow creators from different backgrounds. The more diverse input your brain gets, the less it relies on stereotypes. 3. Practice individuation. See people as individuals, not as representatives of a group. Instead of this type of person, focus on the person. 4. Slow down decisions. Whether you're hiring, dating, or even making new friends, don't rush. Bias thrives in speed. Thoughtful reflection reduces errors. 5. Mindfulness and self-awareness. Mindfulness helps you notice your thoughts without judgment. The more aware you are, the easier it is to catch bias in action. 6. Accountability. Invite feedback. Ask trusted friends or co-workers to call you out if you seem biased. It's uncomfortable, but it's powerful. 7. Implicit association test. There are free online tests that reveal hidden biases. They're not perfect, but they can give you insight into areas you didn't notice. These tools aren't about guilt or shame. They're about growth and building a fairer, more conscious way of interacting with the world. Here's the deeper truth. Bias isn't just about other people. It's also about how you see yourself. If you've internalized stereotypes, you might unconsciously limit your own potential. For example, believing you're not good at math because of gender stereotypes, thinking you don't belong in certain spaces because you've never seen someone like you there. Reducing implicit bias isn't just about treating others better. It's also about freeing yourself from invisible limits that hold you back. At the end of the day, bias doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. But learning to recognize and reduce it makes you a better one. If this video helped you, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Because the more we understand our minds, the more power we have to change them. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.